Welcome to your national forecast. Very cold this morning as you head out the door to work across the prairies. We'll talk about how cold it is with the wind chill. Hang on to your hats, especially if you're adjacent to Erie or Ontario shorelines today. Strong westerly winds. And coming up in about 10 minutes, we're going to have your winter outlook, letting you know what you can expect as winter officially arrives. Solstice usually occurs between the 21st and the 23rd of December. You're watching the Weather Network on this Thursday. It is the 29th of November and it's time for your national forecast. So the cold air started to arrive around Monday across the three prairie provinces, that really cold Arctic blanket that we were talking about last weekend. Unfortunately, it still looks to be holding on at least for a few more days. If you're waking up this morning, take into consideration that when you see your temperature reading, it's actually going to be, in some cases, upwards of about 10 degrees colder once you take into account the wind chill. As you take a look at your current temperatures this morning, if you're waiting for the C train in Calgary, good morning to you. It does feel closer to minus 22 in Calgary, Alberta this morning. We're also looking at wind chill readings of minus 35 in Lloydminster, minus 32 in Winnipeg at this hour, and minus 37 in Gillum, Manitoba. So on average, take about 10 degrees off your temperatures, and that's what it feels like as you step out your door. Further off to the east, if you're in Toronto, Burlington, Oshawa, temperatures falling through the day. We're going to take a closer look at what's unfolding. We'll get your current fronts up and running, but basically what we've got on the west coast is high pressure. There is some cloud cover. There's just a little low inland, even seeing a few snow showers this morning in the southern interior. Around Penticton, for example, we've picked up about a centimeter of snowfall thus far. Travel lee side of the Rockies, and you've got a very cold forecast continuing to shape up. This afternoon, starting on the west coast, enjoy it in Vancouver, in Abbotsford, in New Westminster. We will be seeing changes coming for your long range. Further across the prairies, as your temperatures take another 10 degrees off, that's what it's expected to feel like with the wind chill. So very cold air in place, and obviously what we'll be looking at, especially in Alberta, is Highway 16 and north looks to receive the coldest of the air, at least in that province. In northern Manitoba this afternoon, we're looking at some snowfall. I know we're seeing light snow around Gillum right now. Churchill, Thompson, all looking at some light snowfall in and around the area as we head towards the afternoon hours, at least north of Thompson, I should say, around the 280. This afternoon, as we head into northern Ontario, an interesting scenario, strong westerly winds. We were talking about this on the weekend. What we're dealing with is snow squall activity. If you're around Sault Ste. Marie, for example, even towards White River, you bet there's going to be the chance for about 10 to 15 centimeters of snow. We do have a snowfall warning that is posted. So a heads up along sections of the 11, the 17. Could be looking at some reduced visibility. Snow squalls as well adjacent to Huron and Georgian Bay. We're going to watch the 12, the 136, the 169, and the 21. Kincardine, Goderich. If you're over towards the Georgian Bay Islands, for example, and Coldwater, expect some very intense snow squall activity. Penetanguishene, Midland, maybe upwards of about 20 centimeters. A special weather statement has been issued from Lake St. Clair, extending through the eastern shores of Erie and Ontario, talking about very strong winds through today. Around Toronto, they could be gusting 50 to 70 kilometers per hour. Areas in the wind warning, they could be upwards of 75 kilometers per hour with those strong westerly gusts. Snowfalls we head further eastward to Quebec could extend to about 15 centimeters of snow. We're going to take a quick look right now at your mosaic. So the pink, we did see some freezing rain earlier this morning in and around the North Bay area. That has since changed over to snowfall. Temperatures fall through the day. It's going to be windy, very blustery. Heads up if you are driving as well up around the Barrie area, just if you're coupling snow with strong winds. Heading further east, well, the storm, it's en route to Atlantic Canada. Okay, long-range forecast. We're going to start it all off for you as we head through the overnight hours tonight. This is what you're looking at. So mild enough for this event to be rainfall for those of us in Nova Scotia. You'll be looking at snowfall in New Brunswick. Generally speaking, around a 10-centimeter event. Travel north of Edmundston, though, and you could go upwards of about 15 centimeters. Strong winds as well, driving in through Newfoundland. The wind should be easing back across Ontario, and of course we still have wind chills in place across the prairies. It's going to be blustery tonight if you're in a Lethbridge, Medicine Hat, even all the way up towards Lone Rock, Saskatchewan. Heading out on Friday, temperatures as we head towards the weekend are going to be cooling on the west coast, and that also means the lower mainland. In fact, we could be looking at highs sitting close to the freezing mark as we head towards Saturday. So I just really quickly want to get to that. Mixing possible western Vancouver Island Friday and Saturday. The story for the prairies is we stay cold right through the end of the weekend. So a cold Arctic blast that occurred last weekend really staying in place straight through this weekend. This is going to be the story to watch for those of us in Ontario. All depends on the track of the low. We could be talking about the chance for some heavy amounts of snowfall, even changing over to rain and then back over to snow in the southwest. And it looks to get quite stormy for those of us on the west coast for the end of the weekend.
Sometimes all you need is a little warmth. Like cuddling into a warming throw, sleeping in the warmth.
Kelly Steves in Moncton.
We're going to head to northern Manitoba, where ferry traffic will soon be back to normal. That's great news for residents of Norway House. A ferry that's been stuck in the ice in the Nelson River since Saturday has finally been freed. No food, fuel, or other supplies were able to be transported to the community. Now, the residents obviously rely on the ferry until the river's ice is thick enough to support vehicles. A state of emergency was in place for much of the week, but it is expected to be lifted once the ferry resumes its regular operations. The Atlantic provinces were graded on their performance in curbing greenhouse gas emissions. Many didn't get stellar marks. Environmental groups issued report cards just yesterday, which suggest that many are failing to make the grade. New Brunswick did see an improvement in their overall mark. They got a B for their efforts. That is up from a C- just last year. In international news, survivors of the cyclone that hit Bangladesh last week are asking for better aid distribution. About 600 victims in southern Bangladesh have staged demonstrations demanding of rice. That's news for this half an hour. A check on active weather is coming your way after these messages. Welcome to your traveler's forecast. Okay, if you're planning on doing some traveling to the United States, we thought we would put together a map of selected city conditions that are expected on this Thursday afternoon. Take a note, if you're traveling along the Pacific Coast Highway, you'll definitely need your sunglasses as well if you're heading to the Florida Panhandle. Gulf Coast states are fairly quiet, but we are looking at some rains moving in towards the Boston area. So call Logan International ahead if you are traveling into that area. The real story for those of us around the lower Great Lakes is going to be the winds through the afternoon hours. They're going to be coming almost due westerlies behind that cold front, and they could be gusting upwards of 90 kilometers per hour, particularly eastern areas of Erie and Ontario. So we're going to talk about the east momentarily. To the west, though, there's that Arctic blanket. It's still in place across the three prairie provinces. In fact, even looking at some cooler conditions shaping up for those of us in Vancouver and Kamloops for the weekend. This morning, we've had some light snowfall in and around the Okanagan. What you're dealing with predominantly is a flow from high pressure, but watch western Vancouver Island as we head towards the evening and overnight. You'll get some clouds streaming in and just the odd chance of even some mixing early Friday morning. Anything you receive, though, is going to be very light. This morning, it's feeling close to the minus 35-degree range as you travel along Highway 16 to the north, even colder to the south. Well, I'm not even going to use the word milder because it's still cold, just not as cold. Overnight tonight, when you're taking a look at these temperatures, the one thing I want you to keep in mind, and I'm sure that you already know this, is that take about another 10 degrees off, because once we take into consideration the wind chill, it'll be feeling more like, let's say, minus 33 in Lloydminster and minus 32 in and around the Saskatoon area. So that cold Arctic air continues to really keep its stronghold on the three prairie provinces. And unfortunately, while you could see a few snow showers just developing along this boundary, we're really not looking at any temperature changes. In fact, if anything, we're going to see the winds picking up, which could result obviously in greater wind chills, and that will be as we head towards the weekend, so we'll talk more about that. The story in Ontario is snow squalls. Potential for that off of Georgian Bay and Huron. Just a heads up for some of you as you're trying to travel this afternoon home from work or get around, period. You might be having a hard time of it, and that is thanks to the squalls. Now, the areas that we're going to be watching are the 21, the 136, the 169, and the 12. Strong westerly winds behind this cold front, temperatures falling through the day. Well, Lake Louise has about 22 runs open, and Whistler Blackcomb is seeing a snow depth of about 162 centimeters in the mid-mountains. So if you're planning a ski trip in the next couple of days or weeks, we would love to see your photos and share them with everyone else on air. Of course, it's time to take a look at your weather. We're going to start all off heading to New Brunswick, and shots of winter coming in. This one's sent to us from Danielle Dion. Thank you so much for this. Talking about snowfall, I love this picture of St. John's, Newfoundland, spotlights in the sky. It's spectacular. It almost looks surreal. Long Lac, Ontario, talking about a beautiful day in my hometown. Thank you very much for that, Juliette. And we thought we would end off in La Belle Provence, Lac Beauport, Quebec, taking a look at a winter forecast. It is warmer in the Yukon for parts of it than it is across the prairies at this hour. We're going to talk about how cold it is. Hang on to your hats, definitely. Ontario, Quebec, looking at some very strong winds throughout today. And coming up in 10 minutes, do you want to know what winter's going to be like? Do you really want to know? We're going to give you the answer. Watching the Weather Network this Thursday. It is the 29th of November. I almost said this weekend because I'm so used to being in here on Saturday and Sunday. Welcome to your national forecast. Thank you for the call from beautiful Belleville, Ontario. Talking about a house that you have to see if you're in and around the Welland area on Davis Street. I just want to mention for any of you planning on taking a drive today in Ontario, it's going to be very difficult, I think, at times to navigate, really depending on where you're at because of snow squalls. We'll get to all of that. For now, though, 'tis the season, right? Because, well, Saturday is the 1st of December, and then we all know what we'll be counting down to, so some people already getting ready. I don't know if you've picked out your tree yet. I have to tell you, you all might think that I'm a little bit crazy, but I love my Christmas tree so much. Obviously, it's a fake one. So I keep it up year round. And this kind of stemmed out of me being lazy last Christmas, that I just didn't want to take it down. So I told my mom I was going to call it the Happy Tree and just leave it up year round. And you need something to think of that's positive today if you're across the prairies, because John DeGaris, one of our technical producers back behind the scenes, he's phenomenal, and he comes to me and he says, yeah, I found some readings for you. So the warmest spot in Manitoba right now is Victoria Beach. That's the warmest spot in all of Manitoba. The temperature is -17, feeling closer to the mid-20s with the wind chill. So that gives you an idea of just how cold it is as you step out your door. Let's take a look at some current temperatures, and we did reference that the parts of the Yukon were warmer than parts of the prairies. So Herschel in the Yukon is currently -9, and, well, if you're in Val Marie, Saskatchewan, you're the warm spot there at -12. Very cold air in place, and once again, take about another 10 degrees off. So if you're taking the C train in Calgary, it is feeling into the low -20s, closer to -30 if you're taking the LRT in and around Edmonton. Temperatures falling through the day in southern Ontario. We'll get our current fronts up and running for you in a moment, but I'm just going to paint on what we've got going on so you guys have an idea. We do have high pressure off the Pacific coast. You got a little disturbance for those of us on the west coast, and then of course we do have a low that's been driving into Ontario. So take a look at the satellite perspective. A few showers just streaming through the southern extent of the Strait of Georgia at this hour, and we've got just a few light snow showers trickling in the interior towards the 3A. This afternoon, enjoy today in New Westminster and Burnaby and Vancouver. Temperatures will be cooling for you as we head towards the weekend, while the Okanagan, Penticton, picked up about a centimeter of snow so far. What you'll be seeing is that tapering off. Very cold air in place, lee side of the Rockies, but I've got some good news for you, especially if you live in Wild Rose Country, but you have to stay tuned for your long-range forecast to find out what that is. Take a quick perspective of the north. So there's the warmer air in place for those of us up in the Yukon as compared to, let's say, the Northwest Territories or even northern BC. Right now, we are seeing some light snowfall around Island Lake. Up towards Gillam, we've had some reduced visibility, and the snow extends all the way across Ontario. Snowfall warnings up to 15 centimeters, the eastern shores of Superior. Very strong westerly winds today. A heads up along the 11, the 17, the 136, and even if you're traveling down towards Kincardine or Goderich around the 21. Winds in the warning zones could be up to 90 kilometers per hour eastern areas of Erie and Ontario, up to around 15 centimeters possible for those of us as we extend north of Quebec City and through the lower north shore of the St. Lawrence. What you all will see is temperatures falling through the day, so some rainfall could be changing over to snow. Heading out this afternoon in the nation's capital and through Montreal, expect some mixing, and all this is en route to Atlantic Canada. So when that storm drives into Atlantic Canada through the afternoon hours, should be mild enough in Nova Scotia for some rain. I think you'll start to see some mixing if you're towards the Fundy shores, but north of Edmundston is where we look to see the heaviest snowfall. We could exceed about 10 centimeters. Through the overnight tonight, still dealing with that anywhere Mabou County, back through Truro and extending through Newfoundland and Labrador, lower north shore of the St. Lawrence and the Gaspé. Wind should be easing for you in southern Ontario. Still dealing with some snow squall activity, but it should really be weakening in intensity. Back across the prairies, cold and windy, and that Arctic air really is not going anywhere. In fact, as we head through the next few days, we'll even see temperatures falling off through the south coast and lower mainland of British Columbia. Friday, temperatures will warm up again for you in the southwest, even Windsor through Toronto. With the approach of this next system, could start off to see a few flurries, and then that might change over to a few showers. The real story, though, for the Great Lakes Basin comes this weekend. Just a heads up, this is the storm to watch, and depending on its track, we could be talking about some heavy snows to the north, even the chance for some freezing rain Sunday morning for areas further south. Now, the good news for Alberta and BC is coming in the very long range, especially for Alberta. Strong downsloping winds for Monday. Temperatures will warm up dramatically.
Harvey's introduces the Ricky Cheeseburger. One flame.
Easy report. Relax. It's FedEx.
Okay, as we take a look at highways across the country, what we're noticing is that really not seeing a lot of activity across the prairies or back out through British Columbia. Things are fairly quiet. Snow is expected, though, to drive into the area as we head towards the long range. This morning, though, if you're heading out in Ottawa, some light snow squalls back. We'll talk more about that around Superior. Okay, we're going to take a closer look at active weather. Good morning to you in Ottawa. We're seeing some light snow around the area. Visibility reporting about 3 statute miles at the International Airport. If you're back across Superior, I just want to say north of Sault Ste. Marie, right around Montreal Lake, around that Highway 17 and pressing towards the 129, we do have some bands coming off Superior, some snow squall activity. Visibility could be quite horrible, especially as we head towards this afternoon. Across the prairies, it's not so much that we're dealing with any huge storms. In fact, it's too cold for really dealing with a lot of snowfall. Very dry atmosphere, very cold. Take about another 10 degrees off your temperatures. That's what it should feel like throughout today and tonight. So this Arctic blanket that essentially just draped itself over the 3 provinces on Monday, really holding steady. In fact, unfortunately, we're going to look to stay into that pattern for the next few days. Could see some light snow showers just extending along our boundary that's pushing across Saskatchewan and Manitoba. Cool conditions, though, lingering with you straight through the weekend. But some good news is coming for southern Alberta come Monday. You probably know what that is. We'll talk more about that. Today, heaviest amounts of snow squall activity look to be around the 136. We're going to watch Lita Georgian Bay, Huron, and then back across Superior. A heads up along the 17, the 129, as mentioned, the 136, the 12, and the 21. At times, we could be in compromised visibility on the roads. Wind shift behind the cold front, westerlies. As you can see, the isobars come closer together, so what we're looking at is a stronger wind field. Windy conditions, special weather statement out anywhere From Lake St. Clair pushing east towards around the Toronto, even Peterborough areas, a very windy afternoon in the forecast. Now, wind warnings have been posted for the eastern areas of Erie and Ontario. The winds and the lake effect should somewhat subside as we head towards tonight, but then Friday morning that lake effect looks to be reinvigorated as we get another system pressing through the area. So more westerly winds look to be on tap for tomorrow. Heading further east, we're going to talk about the snow that's forecast coming up in your national.
Introducing 50 Unique, car and home insurance for the unique needs of people aged 50 and over. For more.
So in the east, we're talking about snowfalls, snow squalls, and some strong winds. If you're on the northern extent of Highway 2 in New Brunswick up towards the St. Lawrence River, that's where we could see in excess of about 10 centimeters of snow, mixing possible further south towards the Fundy. Heading out in Ontario throughout the afternoon and even evening hours, we'll be dealing with snow squalls lead to Georgian Bay, Huron, and eastern Superior, as well as some very strong westerly winds. We'll talk more about this in your next national forecast. Very cold air in place across the prairies, Highway 16 and north. It's going to be feeling into the around minus 30 to minus 40 degrees when you take into account the wind chill. Only slightly warmer for areas further south. Very cold air in place, and that looks to continue straight through Friday. What you'll be dealing with, though, for the west coast of Vancouver Island in the morning hours will be the chance of some mixing. Very light if you see anything, but present nonetheless. Quiet today. Still sunny, but we are cooling down around New Westminster, Burnaby, and Vancouver, just in time for the weekend. Remaining cold across the prairies, could see some flurries developing and even more lake effect possible on Friday. Superior, Georgian Bay, and Huron once again as we get more of a west-southwesterly push with this next area of low pressure. Cooling back in through the Maritimes, and we'll be looking for some mixing traveling further north now in Newfoundland, anywhere from the Notre Dame Bay through the northern Avalon. Take a quick look at temperature forecast highs expected throughout the afternoon. Keep in mind with the wind chill, it will feel even colder. Cold air stays in place across the prairies for the end of the week. In Medicine Hat, Alberta, it is currently minus 26 with the wind chill. From wind chills to winds, we're seeing strong winds in Windsor, Ontario right now. They're gusting to about 45 kilometers per hour. How bad could the winds blow today? We'll give you those answers. And as well, coming up in the next 10 minutes, are you curious? Are you waiting for spring? We're going to let you know what the winter outlook is for the entire country coming your way in weather news. Welcome everyone to your national forecast. It is Thursday. It's the 29th of November. And you know, you have to argue with me that we're still dealing with fall because it sure feels like winter, doesn't it? In fact, let's take a look at some of the coldest weather out there across the country. Of course, we're taking a look at Nunavut, Manitoba, Alberta, and Saskatchewan. Take a look at those wind chill readings. And it's interesting because on the weekend, I actually had a friend of mine say, I was watching the Weather Network on the weekend and you were focusing on the wind chills across the prairies, and she's like, oh, it doesn't seem like it'd be that bad if you're just going from your car to the office. But as you're well aware, a lot of people, take public transit, and a lot of people work outside for a living. So when we're talking about this kind of air in place, it's something that can be very dangerous for a lot of people. Unfortunately, doesn't look to be going anywhere anytime soon. Let's take a look at some current temperatures. So as mentioned, it is minus 26 in Medicine Hat right now when we factor in the wind chill into the low minus 20s around Calgary. Lethbridge dealing with about a core temperature of minus 13, so not including the wind chill, and some light snowfall. Good morning to you in Ottawa. Light snow showers still being reported at the Ottawa Airport and at the Charlottetown Airport in Prince Edward Island. Take a look at the current fronts zoning it into the west. You bet. High pressure. This is the story for those of us on the west coast. Little trough, though. That's what's kicking off the cloud cover and even some light snow showers that we've been dealing with in through the Okanagan over towards Highway 3A. Lee side of the Rockies, and well, we all know what the story is. It's the very cold, frosty air mass that we have entrenched in place. Ontario, we're dealing with snow squalls. We've got westerly winds, eastern shores of Superior. We've got them east of Georgian Bay as well as Huron. And what you're dealing with when you get this cold air overriding the warmer waters of the lakes is blinding visibility brought on by snow squalls. Okay, further east we go. A few snow showers as mentioned around Charlottetown at this hour. And We're dealing with some heavier snows anywhere from Highway 2, the northern extent of Highway 2, I think just around the Evanston area, New Brunswick, up towards the St. Lawrence River Valley. So we'll talk more about that. But for now, to the west coast we go. There's your cloud cover. Fairly mild today for the south coast. Pleasant in case you're planning on doing some boarding or skiing at Whistler Blackcomb. Conditions looking quite favorable for hitting the slopes today. If you do, take a snapshot of it and send it to us, users at theweathernetwork.com, or users.theweathernetwork.com, pardon me. This afternoon, very cold air across the prairies. Take about another 10 degrees off your temperatures. That's what it will feel like with the wind chill. Chance of a few snow showers. We've seen that unfold this week. Really, the story is the cold air, and you all know that. The snowfall warning obviously has been changed to a snow squall warning, and we have some decent bands driving across eastern Superior. Watch out on the 17 at this hour, north of Sault Ste. Marie around Montreal River, advancing towards the 129 near Ranger Lake. Snow squalls and strong winds look to be the story for some of us this afternoon. In fact, even around London and Hamilton, you could see those winds gusting near 90 kilometers per hour. Heavy amounts of snow possible in excess of 10 centimeters, lower north shore of the St. Lawrence, north of Quebec City around Lac Saint-Pierre. At this hour, some light showers being reported in the city of Mississauga, but it's already changed over to some snow showers around Hamilton. Temperatures do fall through the afternoon. They've already fallen about 2 degrees in and around the city of Toronto. And then we'll take a quick look at the snowfall and the mixing that's possible this afternoon in the east.
This long-range forecast is brought to you by Reitmans.
So essentially what we are looking at, I know we're seeing some snow showers, for example, right now and around the Charlottetown area, is when your temperatures bump up, because it's expected to be quite mild this afternoon, that you'll get into some slushy precipitation. Through the overnight hours, our low continues to drive further east. The winds will ease somewhat around the lower and Great Lakes, and what you will see is the snow squalls really weakening in intensity. I don't think they're going to dissipate fully, but they do look to weaken, so better driving conditions is what that will translate into. Windy conditions for you, Estevan, all the way up through Lone Rock and Edmonton. It is going to be bitterly cold across the prairies for the next few days. I know I sound like a broken record, but unfortunately, folks, that's what you're dealing with. Friday, BC, we're cooling down with the south coast and lower mainland as well for areas further north. Next system drives into Ontario, could see some light snows and through the southwest snow showers. And what we'll be looking at is the chance for more snow squall activity. A windy one for you tomorrow, anywhere from the Avalon Peninsula over towards the Hamilton Sound and Labrador for those of us in the east. And then Saturday, this is the story to watch. For eastern Canada, depending on the track of that low, we could be talking about some heavy snowfall and some very strong winds. Back across the west, though, Chinooking taking place, so you're warming up in Alberta for Monday.
Hello, fashion lovers. Today we look at the do's and don'ts.
This traveler's forecast is brought to you by Air Miles.
Okay, it's time to take a look at your traveler's forecast. We're going to briefly focus on selected conditions for major U.S. centers this afternoon on this 29th of November. I don't really think you'll be encountering a lot of airport delays. In fact, you really shouldn't see too many at all. Just a heads up, though, if you're flying into Logan International, because of the rainfall, there might be a few delays due to low ceilings. Closer to home, though, just a warning already this morning, some of those roads in Ontario not looking great thanks to snow squall activity. So we're going to talk about where and how much you could receive coming up. So windy and unsettled, stormy for some communities in the east. Across the west, the story is obviously the Arctic air that has nestled into place. To the west coast we go. We've had some cloud cover this morning, a few snow showers, even just dusting lightly in the Okanagan over towards the 3A. What you're dealing with, though, is predominantly a flow around high pressure or circulation around high pressure, clockwise situation setting up. But there is a little low that could kick off a bit of mixing tomorrow morning, western areas of Vancouver Island. And then the story is going to be the fact that we are getting colder towards the weekend, and that includes places like Vancouver and even Abbotsford. In fact, as we head towards Saturday, and I know it's a few days out, but the forecast high around Vancouver